On today's episode, we clean, organize, and continue to inspect my 930 turbo motor. Mike is in the process of breaking down the rods off of the crankshaft and inspecting the bearings. And so far, a little bit of wear, but for the most part, they check out. Yeah, they look pretty decent, which is a good thing. It doesn't matter that much though, because we're gonna be putting in new bearings, and you said the crank is gonna be micro polished?
Correct.
Yeah. Mike, what do we look for on the crank in terms of damage, if there was some?
As far as bearing clearances go, if there's any discoloration from heat or contamination, metal particles that have gone through the engine and maybe have gotten caught up in a bearing and scratched the surface of the crankshaft, and we don't see any here. Minor, as you would find in an engine that has almost 100,000 miles on it.
Right. Very good. Very, very good. I'm happy. The rods are happy. Everyone's happy. So we spent quite a bit of time putting parts into the parts washer today. They look all grungy and dirty like this. And when they're all done, they come out looking like this. Not bad, right? Dave, if you're watching this, we need to get one of these, because this thing works magic on grime and dirt. Today I've been given a bunch of tasks, and one is to strip the intake manifold down. So I'm going to get to that. I'm going to take the throttle body off, all the auxiliary equipment, and then into the parts washer it goes. And there we have it, a bare intake manifold. Look how shallow this thing is. But hey, that's 1987 for you. Mike's examined the block today and had a look at all the oil squirters, which you can see are these tiny little squirters there that provide oil and lubrication to the pistons. And unfortunately, one of them is bad, but all other 5 are good. So he's gonna replace that one, but the rest of the case and block looks good. So we're gonna continue tearing it down by removing all these studs. Next up, we're gonna start tearing the heads down, which, as you'll see quickly, the bottom portion is gonna separate from the top. Isn't that so cool? Kind of reminds me of a motorcycle engine. And these, of course, are all individual cylinders. And guess where they're going? That's right, the parts washer. So this is the last batch of parts to be cleaned. Everything looks fresh and almost like new, but a lot of the metal's rusted and corroded, so what we're gonna do is send it off to the powder coater to make it look like new. All of TurboCraft's wiring harnesses are built in-house by Mike here, and as you can see, he's plotted out the diagram for my EFI harness with the AAM Infinity. It looks complex to me, but Mike, you said it's going to take 3 days?
About 2.5 or 3 days, yeah.
Wow, okay. So we're going to get down to business here. Well, Mike is. I'm just going to watch and try to learn a bit. So, as you can see, we've got some labels starting here. One of the first things, I assume.
Yes.
And then where do you go from there?
First, we'll start by building the chassis side of the harness, and then I'll move along to the engine side. Engine side takes way longer than the chassis side. Chassis side should be done yet this afternoon.
Oh, great. Okay.
Maybe.
And everything's connected through. I saw a firewall, like pinned.
Be a two bulkheads.
Bulkhead connector.
The,
yeah,
the
look at those.
Infinity has enough pins where I can't put it all in one, so I have to have two.
But that is super slick, and I'm excited to see this come together. We got the label maker pumping out labels. I don't know if you can see them or not, but... and then of course they end up on wires here, which is really awesome. So you know exactly what you're working with. So this is a tachometer. We're getting close to the final assembly of the chassis harness here. Mike's about to work some magic and lay down the heat shrink down onto over the entire set of wires here. And we're gonna watch this happen either fairly easily. Is this an easy process? Or is it kind of...
Normally it's not too bad. This harness being a little bit extra long because it's going to go up in the front area, it gets a little harder.
Yeah. This is probably fit for a two-man job, exactly.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
I can shoot video and hold it.
Talent.
There we go. We're at the painstaking process of... Mike, you have to do, what, 60 of these?
On this bundle, yeah, there's about 60 crimps.
Wow, that's gonna be fun times. And this is all in preparation for hooking it up through the terminal.
The bulkheads.
The bulkhead, okay.
So, it's actually a nicer look in the long run, and if the engine has to be taken out in the future, there's
just that, right?
Just two. Well, the factory's 14 pin in the driver's side kick or rear quarter panel for the electronics and gauges, but then it's just these two for all the EFI stuff.
I gotcha. So it's worth its weight in gold to do this now.
It would definitely a lot easier if and when you have to pull a motor in the future, and it just looks cooler.
I do agree. I am about the cool factor. We're on to the final, somewhat final, we still have to do some heating of the shrink wrap, but final assembly of the chassis harness here. There's a diagram that lets Mike know that he's created, obviously, where everything goes. Looks like fun times.
It's color by number.
Yeah. So all the wiring done here. We're at the final stage, and that's the shrink tube actually shrinking over the wires. Hooray, hooray. And we've got a finished wiring harness, at least for the chassis side, right, Mike?
Correct.
And this is going to run from the AM Infinity
This side.
on one end, right?
Yep.
And this is going to head to the engine side.
This will go through the firewall. We'll make a plate to mount these bulkheads to, and then on the other side of the bulkhead will be the engine harness.
Perfect. And now onto the engine harness, right?
Correct.
There we go. And that one's going to take much longer, right?
Correct.
Good deal.
3 days later.
These ID 1000 injectors have just shown up. And the good thing about them showing up is not that they're going to be installed on the engine right away, but Mike was able to finish the engine side harness. So it's all complete. And now it's on to some other stuff. Unfortunately, my intercooler here is going to need to be modified, and John the extravagant fabricator here at TurboCraft is going to take care of it. So tell us what we got going on.
Okay, so this was originally set up for a tall manifold, like a Carrera style intake manifold.
Right.
We're going to change this to a 911 style intake manifold, which obviously is flatter and the throttle body is facing forward.
Gotcha.
So what we've done with this intercooler here, they originally had a adapter pipe that came off of here and went over to the throttle body. And we've gone and cut this off. I had to cut it off in 2 pieces just because of the way my saw works here.
Yep.
And we've removed that, so we've retained this nice cast outlet shape in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went ahead and went in here and kind of blended this out a little bit more than they had it to give it, a little
Clean it up, make it flow some more, huh?
Then,
I like that.
This is our Pro Stock intercooler fixture, which obviously is slightly different, but uses a very similar core dimension.
Yep.
So this will fit on here. Obviously, the locators are not going to be in the same exact spot, but the real important one is our fan ring here. So with this one aligned and this port aligned, I'm going to then change it to one of these billet outlet flanges, which let me turn this around.
Yeah, I see what's going on now.
So with this aligned here, this will fit up on here as my locator, and we're just going to graft a tube from here to here. I mean, obviously that's not lined up 100% yet, but
Very good.
once this is done, then we can put it in the car. The other 2 front mounting points are slightly different, which is this bracket here and this bracket here. I'm not fully determined. Possibly I can make some custom brackets to retain these mounting tabs. If not, I'll have to remove this and then make another tab that comes up and picks
I
up
gotcha.
to our...
Okay.
On the 911 style intake manifold, it's obviously flat. The throttle body is facing the rear of the car versus the front of the car. So this flange here actually meshes this.
That makes so much sense, and I should have realized
with an
that.
O-ring. So that'll be, with our standoff, that'll be our front mounting point for the intercooler, and then obviously the brackets back here have to be altered, and then this is our rear bracket, which is that two-hole tab that comes off the back of that thing.
Now I can visualize this. Sweet.
So that kind of sits over to the side, which allows you to keep air conditioning or whatever.
Yeah, all that goodness. And so for the other side, we're good to go to use it as is?
I would assume so.
Yeah, I think so. We just need like a different adapter. Actually, no, you don't.
It should be the same.
Yeah, you're right.
So as long as this thing is mounted, in the same general location as it was originally with the other intake manifold, this and then these 2 front mounting tabs are really the only 2 things that are going to need to be altered.
Perfect.
So.
Well, I'm going to sit here and watch you do this now.
All right, sounds good. All right, so what we did here is obviously with this locator here, off camera I took some measurements of this, and I cut a piece to go in there, which is a 3-inch radius, 3-inch diameter bend. Has to have a slight angle back here because the angle coming off this thing was a little bit more aggressive than what we needed to come up here. So this actually fits inside of a groove in here. And then this goes up in here. Kind of do our best to get everything aligned.
The jig is fancy. I'm sure it helps with making sure everything lines up.
Normally with our Pro Stock, by the time I'm to this point, I already have mounting locations.
I got you.
We do have your one most important rear fan ring mount, so that's basically what I'm basing this off of, and also parallelism between the rows of the core and obviously the edges of the fixture.
Right, right.
So once I get this in here, pretty much how I like it, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to weld this piece of tube to this flange so that I'm only working with one piece. Then we'll fit it a little bit more and then get it tacked up to the core and then
makes
weld
sense,
it.
yeah.
So actually what we'll do is we'll weld this and we'll get it fit and tack this here and we'll verify that it's working correctly in the car. So that'll be the next step.
Perfect.
Ooh.
And that's it for now, right?
Yep.
Perfect. So far, so good. And I'd call that success, right?
Yep, well, we'll see. We'll close this wing here and make sure everything looks square. Oops.
Oh, that's my camera. It's okay. Look at that.
Go.
So we haven't had much modification needed to be done to the headers here, except one minor thing. There was a slip fit here. And John, what did we do with this?
So what we did here is we actually turned a single slip, which is the inside tube here, into a double slip.
And why did we do that?
Originally, you had your V-band connection here, and it had this 1 3/4 tube coming straight off of it, which is the one you see on the inside.
Right.
That 1 3/4 tube slipped into this 1 7/8 tube as a male-female union.
Yep.
That's considered a single wall slip, which does work, but they are more prone to having a tendency to leak.
Yep.
So what we did, since this is a pressurized system and we still need an expansion joint, we just converted this one, or actually added an outside tube to make it into a double slip. Now
And
it
that
has,
should keep the exhaust from leaking out?
correct. Now the male side of this tube, our original tube, slips into the female tube on the mating header, and then this outside tube, which we swedged to just over 2 inches, will actually slide down over the outside of this other one. And of course, it's a tight fit,
We want it tight though.
and then that prevents the exhaust gas from being able to escape.
Right.
You know, it gives
So it's
it
almost like a
double
double
yeah.
pass, yeah. Sweet.
And this is what you would find like in an OEM application or for an expansion
I
joint.
gotcha. And the expansion joint is there because these engines, when you have the headers on from side to side, there's a bit of expansion going back and forth, right?
Correct, yeah. It's a Boxster, so as it heats, it'll expand a few millimeters, and
Yep.
as it cools, it'll shrink a few millimeters, and even more so in the stainless steel headers, they have a tendency to grow and shrink very rapidly, under
Yeah,
acceleration and deceleration. So
Very
you
cool.
put an expansion joint in there, that allows it to do its thing without actually cracking the
Nice.
collector. So
And we also welded a V-band flange on here for a Turbo Smart 45mm wastegate that is en route. So we'll show you that when it gets here. That's about as far as we get with the intercooler modifications. Right now, we're waiting on some vibrant components. So we can build this pipe here, completely redo it actually. John's gonna change it up to fit. Here's a preview of our turbo, a Garrett GTX 35R. So that's what's going to be powering this engine, and there's still a bunch of fab work left, but we'll get back to it once we get our vibrant components. So that wraps up yet another episode. I hope you're enjoying this series because there's lots more to come.